I'd like to extend a special welcome to our two very special guests today, Professor William Lane Craig and Venerable Dr. Sieg Fa-Ren. The topic today is Science and Religion, a dialogue between a Christian and a Buddhist. And today we'll be hearing from both of our speakers. Each speaker will speak for 20 minutes, after which our facilitator, Dr. Angela Chan, will also come and host, and there will be a question time where you can come and where you can ask questions for those at the front. For the first speaker, I want to introduce Professor William Lane Craig. Professor William Lane Craig is a research professor of philosophy at the Talbot School of Theology. He earned his PhD in philosophy at the University of Birmingham and his PhD in theology at the University of Munich. He has authored or edited over 30 books, including the Blackwell Companion to Natural Theology and God, a Debate Between a Christian and an Atheist, as well as over 100 articles in leading academic journals such as Astrophysics and Space Science and the British Journal for the Philosophy of Science. So would you please join me in welcoming Professor William Lane Craig.
Thank you very much. It's a delight to be invited to engage in this important dialogue with Dr. Sieg today, and I've been looking forward to it. Because my time is so limited, let me cut directly to the chase. I believe that science and Christian theism are allies in the quest for truth. Let me outline 6 ways in which they are related. 1, Christianity furnishes a conceptual framework in which science can flourish. Science is not something that is natural to mankind. As science writer Lauren Isley has emphasized, science is an invented cultural institution which requires a unique soil in which to flourish. Modern science did not arise in the East or in Africa, but in Western civilization. Why is this so? It is due to the unique contribution of the Christian faith to Western culture. As Isley states, it is the Christian world which finally gave birth in a clear, articulate fashion to the experimental method of science itself. In contrast to Eastern religions and folk religions, Christianity does not view the world as a realm of mere appearance or as indwelt by spirits, but rather as the natural product of a transcendent creator who designed it and brought it into being. Thus, the world is a rational place which is open to exploration and discovery. The whole scientific enterprise is based on certain assumptions which cannot be proved scientifically, but which are guaranteed by the Christian worldview. For example, the laws of logic, the orderly nature of the external world, the reliability of our cognitive faculties in knowing the world, the validity of inductive reasoning, and the objectivity of the moral values used in science. Science could not even exist without these assumptions, and yet these assumptions cannot be proved scientifically. They are philosophical assumptions, which, interestingly, are part and parcel of a Christian worldview. Thus, Christianity is relevant to science in that it can furnish a conceptual framework in which science can exist. More than that, the Christian religion historically did furnish the conceptual framework in which modern science was born and nurtured. Number 2, science can falsify and verify religious claims. When various religions make claims about the natural world, they intersect the domain of science and are, in effect, making predictions, which scientific investigation can either verify or falsify. Let me give some examples of each. First, examples of falsification. Some examples are obvious. The views of ancient Greek and Indian religions that the world rests on the shoulders of Atlas or on the back of a great turtle were easily falsified. But more subtle examples are available too. Consider the claim of several Eastern religions like Taoism and certain forms of Hinduism that the world is divine and therefore eternal. The discovery during this century of the expansion of the universe reveals that far from being eternal, all matter and energy, even physical space and time themselves, came into existence at a point in the finite past, before which nothing existed. As Stephen Hawking says in his book, The Nature of Space and Time, almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang. But if the universe came into being at the Big Bang, then it is temporally finite and contingent in its existence, and therefore neither eternal nor divine, as pantheistic religions had claimed. On the other hand, science can also verify religious claims. For example, one of the principal doctrines of the Judeo-Christian faith is that God created the universe out of nothing a finite time ago. The Bible begins with the words, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." The Bible thus teaches that the universe had a beginning. This teaching was repudiated both by ancient Greek philosophy as well as modern atheism. Then in 1929, with the discovery of the expansion of the universe, this doctrine was dramatically verified. Physicists John Barrow and Frank Tipler, speaking of the beginning of the universe, explain, at this singularity, space and time came into existence. Literally nothing existed before the singularity. So if the universe originated at such a singularity, we would truly have a creation ex nihilo, out of nothing. Against all expectations, science thus verified this religious prediction. A second scientific verification of a religious belief is the claim of the great monotheistic faiths that the world is the product of intelligent design. During the last 50 years or so, scientists have been stunned by the discovery of how complex and sensitive a balance of initial conditions must be given in the Big Bang in order for the universe to permit the origin and evolution of intelligent life anywhere in the cosmos. In the various fields of physics and astrophysics, classical cosmology, quantum mechanics, and biochemistry, discoveries have repeatedly disclosed that the existence of intelligent life depends upon a delicate balance of physical constants and quantities. If any one of these were to be slightly altered, the balance would be destroyed and life would not exist. In fact, the universe appears to have been incomprehensibly fine-tuned from the moment of its inception for the production of intelligent life. The odds of this happening by chance are so infinitesimal that some theorists have been driven to postulate the existence of a world ensemble or multiverse of randomly ordered universes, preferably infinite in number, of which our universe is but a random member. Not only is there no evidence for this remarkable metaphysical hypothesis, but as Roger Penrose of Oxford University has urged, if our universe were just a random member of a world ensemble, then we should be observing a much smaller patch of order than we do. For worlds like that are vastly more plentiful in the world ensemble than finely tuned worlds like ours. Thus, given the incomprehensible improbability of the initial conditions necessary for our existence, we should conclude that these are not the result of chance, but of design. Thus, science can both falsify and verify religious claims. Number 3, science encounters metaphysical problems which theism can help to solve. The metaphysician George Gale has observed that we are now entering a phase of scientific activity during which the physicist has outrun his philosophical base camp and is ready and waiting for some relief from his philosophical comrades in arms. A good illustration is the so-called measurement problem in quantum physics. Let me try to explain this as simply as I can. According to the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum physics, subatomic particles do not have all of their properties intrinsically, but only in relation to a measuring apparatus. The problem is that the measuring apparatus itself can also be described by quantum physics, but then it too lacks certain properties like location and velocity unless it is related to another measuring apparatus. But that apparatus can also be described by quantum physics, and off we go on a vicious infinite regress. Unless there is some way to break this chain, nothing would possess any of these properties, which is absurd. Some physicists have proposed that the chain is broken when the measurement is observed by human consciousness. But it seems outrageous to say that the whole universe depends on human consciousness for its existence. After all, didn't the universe exist during the Jurassic Age when there were no humans about to observe it? Moreover, human consciousness is linked to a physical substratum, the brain, which can be given a quantum physical description. So the question inevitably arises, who observes the human observers? What is needed here is a sort of transcendent, cosmic observer who observes immediately the result of any measurement situation. But this is exactly the sort of being that the theist believes in. Thus, the person who believes in God has the resources needed to resolve the measurement problem plaguing the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum physics. 4, theism can help to adjudicate between scientific theories. Lawrence Sklar, a prominent philosopher of science, has remarked, the adoption of one scientific theory rather than another, sometimes in very crucial cases indeed, rests as much upon philosophical presuppositions as it does upon the hard data. Particularly in cases in which two conflicting theories are empirically equivalent, so that one cannot decide between them on the basis of the evidence, metaphysical concerns, including religious concerns, come into play. An excellent example is the special theory of relativity. There are two ways to interpret the mathematical core of special relativity. On Einstein's interpretation, there is no absolute now in the world. Rather, what is now is relative to different reference frames. If you and I are moving with respect to each other, then what is now for me is not now for you. But on H.A. Lorentz's interpretation, there is an absolute now in the world, but we just cannot be sure which distant events in the world are happening now because motion affects our measuring instruments. Moving clocks run slow, and moving measuring rods contract. The Einsteinian and Lorentzian interpretations are empirically equivalent. There is no experiment you could perform to decide between them. But if God exists, then I think Lorentz was right. Here's my argument. 1, if God exists, then God is in time. This is true because if God is really related to the world as cause to effect, then a cause must exist either before or at the same time as its effect. So God must be in time. 2, If God is in time, then a privileged observer exists. Since God transcends the world and is the cause of the existence of everything in the world, his perspective on the world is the true perspective. 3, if a privileged observer exists, then an absolute now exists. Since God is a privileged observer, his now is privileged, and thus there is an absolute now, just as Lorentz argued. So, if God exists, then a Lorentzian rather than an Einsteinian interpretation of relativity theory is correct. It's hard to imagine how religion could have any greater relevance to science than this, to show that one theory is wrong and another is right. 5, theism can augment the explanatory power of science. One of the pillars of the contemporary scientific view of the world is the evolution of biological complexity from more primitive life forms. Unfortunately, the current neo-Darwinian synthesis seems to be explanatorily deficient in its explanation of the gradual rise of biological complexity. For one thing, the neo-Darwinian mechanisms of random mutation and natural selection appear to work far too slowly to produce, unaided, sentient life. In their book, The Anthropic Cosmological Principle, Barrow and Tipler list 10 steps in the evolution of Homo sapiens, including such steps as the development of the DNA-based genetic code, the origin of mitochondria, the origin of photosynthesis, the development of aerobic respiration, and so forth, each of which is so improbable that before it would have occurred, the sun would have ceased to be a main sequence star and incinerated the Earth. They report that there has developed a general consensus among evolutionists that the evolution of intelligent life, comparable in information processing ability to that of Homo sapiens, is so improbable that it is unlikely to have occurred on any other planet in the entire visible universe. But if this is the case, then one cannot help but wonder, why should we think that it evolved by unaided chance on this planet? The gradual evolution of biological complexity is better explained if there exists an intelligent cause behind the process, rather than just the blind mechanisms alone. And thus the theist has explanatory resources which the non-theist lacks. Finally, number 6, science can establish a premise in an argument for a conclusion having religious significance. The medieval theologian Thomas Aquinas always assumed the eternity of the universe in all his arguments for the existence of God, since to assume that the universe began to exist made things too easy for the theist. He wrote, "If the world and motion have a first beginning, some cause must clearly be posited for this origin of the world and of motion." Moreover, there was simply no empirical way to prove the past finitude of the universe during the Middle Ages. But the application of the general theory of relativity to cosmology and the discovery of the expansion of the universe during this past century appears to have dropped into the lap of the philosophical theologian precisely that premise which had been missing in a successful argument for God's existence. For now, he may argue as follows. 1, if the universe began to exist, then the universe has a transcendent cause. 2, the universe began to exist. 3, therefore, the universe has a transcendent cause. Premise 2 is a religiously neutral statement which can be found in almost any text on astronomy and astrophysics. And yet, it puts the non-theist in a very awkward situation. For as Anthony Kenny of Oxford University urges, a proponent of the Big Bang Theory, at least if he is an atheist, must believe that the universe came from nothing and by nothing. But surely that is metaphysically impossible. Out of nothing, nothing comes. So why does the universe exist instead of just nothing? It's plausible that there must have been a cause which brought the universe into being. And by the very nature of the case, as the cause of space and time, this cause must be an uncaused, changeless, timeless, and immaterial being of unimaginable power which created the universe. Now, all this is not to make some simplistic and naive judgment like science proves that God exists, but it is to say that science can establish the truth of a premise in an argument for a conclusion having religious or theistic significance. In summary, we've seen 6 different ways in which science and Christianity are relevant to each other. 1, Christianity furnishes a conceptual framework in which science can flourish. 2, science can both falsify and verify claims of religion. 3, science encounters metaphysical problems which theism can help to solve. 4, theism can help to adjudicate between rival theories. 5, theism can augment the explanatory power of science. And 6, science can establish a premise in an argument for a conclusion having theistic significance. Thus, in conclusion, science and Christian theology should not be thought of as foes or as mutually irrelevant. Rather, we've seen several ways in which they can fruitfully interact. And that is, after all, why there is today such a flourishing dialogue between these 2 disciplines going on.
Thank you very much, Professor Craig. For our next speaker, I would like to introduce to you Dr. Sik Faran, whose main training is in religious studies with a focus of Buddhism and religious anthropology. The research focuses on the practice and origin of Chinese Buddhism, particularly as it relates to the rituals of Chinese Buddhism. Since July 2008, she started teaching in the development of cultural and religious studies and the School of Continuing and Professional Studies of the Chinese University of Hong Kong. She is now a visiting assistant professor at the Center of Buddhist Studies of the University of Hong Kong, as well as the abbess of the Dharma Nature Preaching Hall. Please welcome Dr. Sik.
Hiya, good afternoon everyone. So before my speech, I just want to have some claims here. It's because I'm trained in the religious study, and then I have just want to provide some views for you to understand Buddhism and understand Buddhist attitude towards Buddhism, truth, science, and philosophy. Okay, so before I give my talk, I just want to show you that kind of the understanding, because we believe that truth is one. Okay, in Buddhist study, in Buddhist attitudes. So we believe that Buddhism can provide some views or some correct view for us to understand more about the truth inside the universe or of the universe. Okay. So, however, we also believe that philosophy and science also provide some views or understanding for us to just like similarity, have some similarity of before speakers. Is because we believe that maybe science can help us to verify or to prove the truth, okay? So we just want to find some answer to help us to understand more about the truth. Or it's because I am studying from the University of Chinese University and then Lancaster University, and then we have a little bit background about the theologies. So we don't want to try to have some that kind of the argument to prove that is it really have a God or not. But we just want to have some understanding about what is the main understanding or the core value of Buddhism. Why we need to believe in Buddhism. What is the thing or attitudes of Buddhism towards the whole universe or the science or the truth. It's because almost we like to understand is that some scholar or some ordinary people, they have some understanding about religions. It's because they believe that they have something is different from science or different from philosophy. Okay, so Buddhists have that kind of the claim is that Buddha said, my teaching is not philosophy. Okay, it's the result of direct experience. Okay, not really or not merely about philosophy. Okay, not only philosophy, but more. Okay, what kind of something more on top of philosophy is that Buddha said, my teaching is a means of practice. Okay, so we focus more about the means. Okay, why we need to do some practices or why we need to understand more about the truth. It's because the core value is that there are two ends over every science or we say over the whole world. We believe that we are now inside the samsara, the wheel of rebirth. It's because we have one problem, is ignorance. Okay, so the ultimate aim of Buddhism is we want to attain nirvana. Nirvana is enlightenment. Okay, so there are two ends there. Okay, one is ignorance and then the other is enlightenment, nirvana. Okay, so if you can solve all kind of the problem about the ignorance, then you can attain nirvana. Okay, so the practice is that the practice in Buddhism is help all sentient beings to solve the problem about ignorance. Okay, because of ignorance, and then we have great hatreds, and then we can create a lot of karma. Okay, after that, because of the karma, and then we need to have some maybe rebirth, maybe suffering. Okay, so the problem is we have some suffering inside the world, and then we need to believe in Buddhism and then have some practices. Okay, so the practices is the means to help all sentient beings to solve the problem of suffering. Okay, so the core value of Buddhism is free from suffering. So why Buddha said that Buddhism is not merely philosophy, but is a kind of the means of practice. Okay, so but the end is that just like the Diamond Sutra, Jin Gang Jin, Kam Gang Ging. Okay, Diamond Sutra is that my teaching is like a raft used to cross the river. Okay, cross the river. River is a kind of the sign. Maybe is the example is that we are now in the river or in the sea, and then this is a kind of the suffering. So his teaching is let us to overcome all kind of the suffering. So this is the claim from the Buddha, and then we provide some views here is that Buddhism is not merely a philosophy, not merely, but philosophy is maybe is a part of Buddhism. Okay, so I provide a kind of view. And then second is that Durkheim, Emil Durkheim, maybe you know him. It's because my major study is about the religions and anthropology. So I take much of my time and then to understand why the religious people need to engage or need to join many kind of the ritual, the religious practice or ceremony. So Emil Durkheim just claimed that what is religious phenomena? Religious phenomena are naturally arranged into two fundamental categories. So one is belief, okay, and the other is right, okay. So that means ritual or the practice is based on the belief of some religious people. So why people need to have the practices? Why we claim that religion is not just philosophy. Okay, philosophy maybe you just need to sit here and then listen to the speech, okay? After that, you don't need to commit anything, okay? You don't need to have some practice. But when you believe in Buddhism, so after a speech I given, and then you need to have some practices. Just like maybe you will just feel that I'm now suffering in the universe, in the rebirth, and then I want to get out from the samsara, the wheel of rebirth, and then I try to solve some problem about karma, and then I need to change my life from the negative karma to do more positive karma. Maybe after my speech, then you will become a vegetarian. Okay, so this is belief, and okay, it's because it's not merely a philosophy. When you just sit here and then listen to a kind of the philosophy, and then you don't need to commit to be a vegetarian, okay? But if you are Buddhist, and then you believe in Buddhism, and then after you accept the teaching from the Buddha, and then maybe you want to have some practices. So this is why I use third line and then to put after the speech of the Buddha. To prove that why Buddha said, we say Buddhism is not merely a philosophy, but it also a kind or a means of practice. Okay, it's a very, very interesting way for you to have a fresh idea about Buddhist attitudes, okay, towards philosophy and science, okay? So this is very important. And then the other scholar I just want to introduce to you is Lillian Smart, okay? It's because I graduated from Lancaster in the UK, and then Lillian Smart also came from Lancaster, okay? A very famous scholar in religious study, and then he find that in each religious tradition, okay, including Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, or Christianity, and then we find that there are 6 dimensions inside each religions. Or maybe some religions just have some of that kind of the dimension. Maybe some of religions, they have all 6 dimensions, okay? Inside all 6 dimensions, so which part should belongs to philosophy? Maybe the doctrinal dimension, But we also will regard that the dimension related to experience, myth, ritual, ethic, social, all kind of that dimension can have some signs, okay, or have some expression inside the religious practice. So we believe that main part inside our religious traditions, so the doctrinal aspect, the doctrinal dimension may be related to the philosophy, okay, related to philosophy. And then if you just think that Buddhism is merely a philosophy, I think it may be a wrong expectation. Okay, so it's because based off that kind of the doctrinal dimension, based off that kind of the belief, and then some Buddhists, they have some expression, maybe inside ritual, okay? So maybe they will join just like the Buddha's birthday is coming in May, okay? And then they will join some ceremony to join the ritual about Buddha bathing. It's because they believe that that kind of the action can help them to maybe to get out from some ignorance, okay? To purify some negative karma, something like that. So why religions is quite unique product inside the whole world is because we don't think religion is same as philosophy. But inside one religious tradition, we can find some dimension is related to philosophy. Okay, so that means I just use an example or story inside Buddhism to let you know how Buddha see or have that kind of the attitude towards science or philosophy or religions in the whole world. He used an example is that when there are some blind people, cannot see blind people, and then there is an elephant here, okay? So the Buddha have an eyes and then he can see. So he will describe, okay, what is the whole elephant look like. But the blind people will just use their method, just like touch, okay, or smell, or something like that. So Buddha said that maybe there are many, we say, maybe subject, method, or department inside university can help you to understand the whole truth, okay, the whole elephant. But they just like to provide some aspect, some information or some knowledge for you to understand a part of the truth, okay? So that means Buddhists just like, he like the people can see the whole truth, okay, can understand the whole truth and also describe what is the truth over the world. But some expert, okay, maybe they can just provide some view for you to understand what is the whole truth. And then we believe that it's same as the other blind people, science, philosophy, or the other subject can also provide some information or knowledge for you to understand more about the truth. So that means the attitude of Buddhism towards the other religions, the other knowledge, science, or philosophy, we believe that we are so open. Or we can have that kind of the comment is that we are, the religions is very science-friendly, philosophy-friendly, or the other religious friendly. It's because we accept the other people use their own ways or own interpretation to understand the whole universe. Okay, so that's why I use that kind of the scholar or Buddhist words for you to understand more about the attitudes. So mainly today I want to introduce more about the Buddhist attitude towards science and philosophy. Okay, I don't want to do much about the how to verify or how to prove. I think it's not the step here I need to do, but I just want to back to the square one. The first step is want to introduce more about the attitudes, okay, towards the others subject or knowledge. Okay, so this is the other parts I want to give you an impression is that, so what is the understanding of the whole truth inside the whole world? Maybe we can divide the truth into two parts in Buddhism. So that means Buddha see that there are two kinds of the truth inside the whole universe. So one is conventional truth, okay? Maybe some people will use the word is classical truth or this worldly truth, okay? So what is conventional truth is all related to the rule or the law of interdependence, 缘起法, 缘起法, okay, interdependence. That means we believe that the whole universe will not just create by themselves, okay? Inside the whole universe, there are some conditions to let some people or to let something, okay? Beings, non-being, phenomena to create, okay? So that means the creation is based on the interdependence relationship, okay? So Buddha just used a law to describe that kind of the truth is the law of interdependence, 缘起法, okay? So inside the law of interdependence, there are some elements inside that law. So one is karma, okay? But maybe some people just like want to use karma conditions together, and then some is karmic consequence together. We will use one term to understand is cause and effect. Okay, 因果, 因果, okay, cause and effect. But inside, that means the 缘起法, the law of interdependence, maybe in some roots or some direction, some aspect is that they are the same as the cause and effect, okay? So inside, we have some creation. Creation is karma, and then when have the creation, we need to base on some conditions, then we can have some creation. So after the karma and the conditions have some interdependence and interaction, after that, the karmic consequences will create, okay? So that means this is the understanding inside the whole universe about creation, about karma, or about cause and effect. So I will use some example to understand or describe that kind of the understanding. So the core value of Buddhist teaching is, I mentioned before, to attain nirvana. So maybe that you can use the understanding about liberation, enlightenment, or something like that. So liberation is free from suffering, of the understanding of Buddhism. So we want to get out from suffering, get out from samsara. So this is the understanding of liberation. It's equal to enlightenment. It's equal to nirvana. So what is the understanding of nirvana? That means no suffering, no ignorance, no defilement. So this is nirvana. 没有烦恼, okay, no any defilement, okay? So this is the nirvana. So maybe nirvana, we will just treat it as a kind of the situation, okay? So enlightenment, nirvana is a kind of the situation. So we are now in the situation of ignorance. We want to attain nirvana through practices, okay? So what kind of the practices is useful? So the all Buddha's teaching, that means Buddhism. So what is Buddhism? Buddhism in the words in Chinese is the teaching from the Buddha. Okay, 佛教. So that means the education or teaching of the Buddha. This is Buddhism. So that means the all teaching of Buddhism just want to let the people or let the sentient being to get out from samsara or get out from suffering. So this is the core value of Buddhism. So that means how to get out from the suffering or nirvana, how to get out from suffering and samsara is very important to, about the first step is establish a correct view. So what is correct view? In Buddhism, we believe that why I am now in the situation of ignorance is because my view towards the whole world is wrong. Okay, we have many wrong expectations. So after my wrong view, and then I will create some negative karma. So negative karma will let me have the negative consequences. Okay, so that means ignorance is related to the incorrect view, okay? So we believe that, so the first step of the practice of Buddhism is to establish a correct view, to correct the problem of ignorance, and then we can create some positive karma. At the end, we can get out from suffering. So this is very important to introduce two kinds of the teaching inside Buddhism. So one is the Four Noble Truths, and then the other is Eightfold Path. So maybe if you are Buddhist, you are very familiar with this kind of the truth or teaching, but these two kinds of the truth can help you to understand the core value of Buddhism and the attitude towards the whole cosmos. So it's because we believe that the problem is about have the correct view or not. So that means the Four Noble Truths is let the people to know now we are now in the situation of suffering. So the first truth is suffering, and then the second truth is the cause of suffering, and then third one is after you solve all kind of the problem, get out from suffering. So what is the understanding and description of the nirvana? Okay, so the fourth truth is the means for you to attain nirvana. So this is Four Noble Truths. This is the very fundamental Buddhist teaching in the whole Buddhism. So based on the Four Noble Truths, so what is the first step about practice? Is because I use the words from Buddha and then to let you know what is Buddhism. So Buddhism is the means of teaching. That means the first step of Buddhist teaching is to establish the right view. Okay? When you have the right view, then you can have the right thinking. Based on the right thinking and view, and then you can create the corresponding a positive karma and help you to free from suffering. Okay, because of the limited time, I just let you know a very brief understanding about the attitude towards science and philosophy of Buddhism. Okay, so thank you very much.
I would now like to also invite Dr. Angela Chan, who is Associate Professor in Nursing at PolyU. Her research is on person-related care, underpinned by a caring human science paradigm, which involves an emphasis of effective communication in healthcare and interprofessional collaborative practice. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I guess I'm really excited to have the honor to be the facilitator for this distinguished talk. I guess just quickly, I wanted to recap some of the points that was made earlier by the distinguished speakers. Professor Craig's views of the relevance between science and Christianity are furnished in 6 different ways. First, it is about the philosophical assumptions for the existing of science. They're very much part of the Christian worldview. Second, it refers to how science can verify and falsify the predictions made about the natural world. To verify, he depicts how science discovery of the expansion of the universe is well corresponded with the Christian's doctrine that the universe had a beginning as God's creation out of nothing. To falsify, he argued against the claim of the divine and hence eternal in some of the Eastern religion of the physical space and time. In science, we all know that the universe and time itself are temporarily finite and has a contingent existence. And thirdly, it addresses how theism can help to solve the metaphysical problems, such as how the vicious, infinite regress of our understanding and interpretation of quantum physics, to which Christians can make better sense from the belief in God as the cosmic observer. The fourth way refers to how the theism can help to adjudicate between rival scientific theories on the absolute now, through acknowledging God being in time as the privileged observer, giving his relation to the world as cause to effect, and his now is the absolute. The fifth way is the gradual evolution biological complexity could be better explained if a way is intelligent causes existing behind the process rather than simply behind the blind mechanisms alone. The last refers to the question, why does the universe exist instead of just nothing? It is then plausible that there must be a cause which brought the universe into being and could now be argued for a scientific conclusion that has religious significance. Dr. Seek has also illustrated the relationship between religion and science through the links of conventional and ultimate truth in Buddhist teaching, with an emphasis that in science, a theory should be tested in several ways before it can be accepted by the scientific community, just as much as in Buddhist teaching, an insight given by any teacher should be validated by our own experience before it can be accepted as the truth. In Buddhism, it does not depend on a supreme being in God. The learning is through the cause and effect in karma, and ultimately self-help for own salvation. For ultimate truth, it refers to eternity, does not create by any condition or cause. Both Professor Cray and Dr. Seek had concluded that science and religion need not be at odds. Rather, they could be compatible, and the certainty of the interactions between science and religion is undoubtedly constructive in guiding our thinking and further our reflections on this complex topic. So I think without any further ado, we'd like to invite them to come up and have a dialogue.
I guess for this session, we can be as informal and relaxing as possible now that we've learned so much about the different doctrines, the different values, and the understanding how to relate to science. I think, how do you want to get it started? Professor Craig, do you have any questions for Dr. Seek or vice versa? If not, I actually have some questions.
Why don't you proceed?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh.
Okay, why don't we get this started?
I wanted to highlight some points of agreement that we have in our dialogue. First, the importance of truth and of having a correct view of the cosmos, of getting things right, having the right view. I think this is crucial, and I appreciate it very much, your emphasis on the essential role that beliefs or doctrines play in religion, and that these are indeed related to philosophy. As a philosopher, my interest is not so much in the rites or the practices as in the doctrines, the truth claims of various religions. And so that is at least a point of commonality, that we want to see the relationship between science and philosophy and the truth of these various religions or religious truth claims. And then the view, of course, that I defended is that a theistic view of the world is better at getting things right. It's closer to the truth than any atheistic religious view of the world, like Buddhism. Buddhism is essentially an atheistic religion, and so the arguments that I've given for theism, I think, would all count against Buddhism as well as secularism, and would suggest that the truth is better to be discovered in a theistic view of the world than a non-theistic one.
Testing? Okay, yes. Yes, I think it's very interesting to have that kind of the point is that it's a Buddhism also accept that there is a supreme God here and then create something or create anything, and then is it a kind of the right rail for us to assist the practice. And then it's because there are some signature of the teaching of Buddhism is that we also want to have some maybe some subject knowledge help us to verify about the truth before we start the practice of inside Buddhism. And then Buddha also claimed that he welcomed all kind of the proofs or science or no science words or knowledge for us to understand more. And then when we come to that kind of the slide I show about the law of interdependence, and then it's kind of the we say it's the teaching for us to understand the whole cosmos or the even or at least inside this world, is that why we are so different in the starting points. If the law of interdependence can give us more about the ideas to understand what is going on, it's a more easier way for us to have the right practice. Just for example, is that you are Western people, you're Western, okay? I am Chinese people, so we have different color of skin. Yes, we have different kind of background. We have different kind of the maybe family background, genes or something like that. So some students of us just ask how to prove there is a rebirth system here, and then I will just ask again, if there is no any system of the rebirth, how come or how do you let me know why we are so different? Okay, so this is my understanding, or my question is that Buddha also led me to prove everything before I start my Buddhist practice. So the first thing is you need to ensure that this is the right path for you to practice. So that means if you are now for noble truth, so first, if you cannot accept or understand we are now in the situation of the suffering, then you don't need to start your practice. Okay, so the first truth is very easy to understand. So we are now in the situation of suffering. So what is the main accent of the suffering is impermanent. So what is impermanent is just like that bottle water, and then when you finish it, then it's become empty. So we cannot keep that kind of the situation permanently. Okay, so this is the understanding of impermanence. Or even some relationship between some peoples, we have what kind of the ignorance is that many university students here, and then maybe they have girlfriends or boyfriends here, and then if they are ignorant, and then they will not believe or have the expectation that their relationship will be broken eventually. Okay, maybe broken or will be broken eventually. So that kind of the wrong understanding is maybe a kind of the ignorance. When their relationship really break, then they have hatreds. or greed, then they will create some negative karma, and then they feel there is a kind of the suffering. So this is why the Buddha said the first truth of the Four Noble Truths is that you need to understand that, are you now in the situation of suffering? Okay, so this is why the Buddha led us to understand more about the truth and before the practice.
Could I ask a question at this point? You emphasize that before embarking on a particular practice to deal with suffering, for example, which is an undeniable fact of experience, as well as impermanence and transitoriness, one needs to be sure one has the right view of the world, of reality. Now, did I understand you, or correct me if I'm wrong, do you think that it's possible to have a theistic Buddhism? That one could believe in a transcendent creator and designer of the universe on the basis of the evidence, and yet still adopt these practices to deal with suffering? Or is Buddhism inherently committed to a non-theistic view of the world? And if so, what justification that would there be?
If you really can prove that, yes.
You would be open to a theistic Buddhism?
If you really can be, yes, it's very open of the Buddhist mind. It's because we are, okay.
That's very different from classical Buddhism.
It's, we are so classic here. Okay, maybe at my talk here, and then I also emphasize one point is that Buddhism is a result-oriented approach of the teaching. So what is the main concern is about free from suffering. Okay, if you really can prove that, then it's okay, go ahead. Yeah, amazing.
Well, I guess that my question is, how do we define suffering from the human dimension, the human term? And maybe alongside with that is, how do you actually view eternity? You know, because especially when you're looking at the ultimate truth, which is very different from the conventional one.
Why no sun there? Okay, so the first question is, why always Buddhism? Why? Professor and then Angela also asked a question about Buddhist view. You are so interested in Buddhist view, is it? So the first question is about how to view about suffering. I mentioned before, impermanence. So the main concern about suffering is the impermanence. So that means we believe that when you solve the problem about the ignorance, and then you can free from the suffering. So that means that is the one whole product is that. So you solve all kind of the problem of ignorance, and then you can attain nirvana. So that means nirvana is equal to no any ignorance, no defilement. So what is the suffering? That means the main suffering is not only physical body. So physical body, we will experience about the impermanence. So inside Buddhist understanding, what is aging problem? No, aging is not 80 years old, not 90 years old. But now, before I start my speech, and is it 12:45? Something, something like that. And then I am older after I finish that seminar. So this is the understanding about impermanent and aging, the suffering inside Buddhism.
Well, wouldn't a better way of solving the problem of impermanence be personal immortality rather than extinction?
I think it's your understanding towards the other people, but we are concerned more about my suffering. Okay, why
yes, but I mean, in nirvana, you cease to have personal self-existence.
It's
really, impermanence is solved by extinction, but wouldn't it be better to have personal immortality, eternal life?
Yes, we want to attain that kind of the enlightenment. But the first problem is that we are now really experience my suffering now. So I need to firstly solve my problem. So why the conventional truth go before the ultimate truth? Okay, so the ultimate truth will be the enlightenment. Okay, but now we are now suffering inside the samsara, and that I really feel I am suffering. So why the impermanent is really a problem is that when you have the ignorance about the incorrect view. So when you experience the impermanence, then the other defilement will come again and again. So example is that the friendship, okay, or boyfriend or girlfriend, when you fall in love and then you feel it's so sweet, is it? It's so sweet. But after that, that kind of the relationship is impermanent, okay? And then you will feel sad, or you want to commit suicide, or something like that. So that kind of the understanding of the Buddha is like a wheel here and rebirth inside the samsara. And then after that, you can, when you feel that kind of the suffering, and then you will create the other problem of the second suffering. Okay, so that means any boyfriend, girlfriends here? No? No lover here? We are all single? Okay, just for example, when I fall in love and then I have, do you know I am female or male? No? Okay. So if I have a boyfriend here and then we fell in love and then we feel so sweet, okay? And then if I have a huge problem of ignorance and then I don't think that he will let me alone. So, and then I will suffer from that kind of the impermanence, okay? Then I will create the other kind of the ignorance and problem, so I feel that kind of the hatreds. Maybe I will hit him or have some, I don't know. Kill him, okay. Yes, maybe I will kill him or hit him. Then I need to at least stay in the police station overnight. So this is the other kind of the suffering, okay. So first suffering is the friendship broken, okay. And then the second suffering is I need to stay overnight in the, yes.
Now,
so
now before we launch further into that, I'd like to try to pull the dialogue back to what the subject was supposed to be today, and that's science and religion. Can you explain to us some ways in which you think Buddhism is related to contemporary science? In my talk, I tried to give a number of examples from relativity theory, contemporary cosmology, fine-tuning of the universe, quantum physics, to show the connections between theism and contemporary science. What connections are there between contemporary science and Buddhism?
I think in many ways, for example, when the science I just like that two kind of the understanding. When Angela see my note also, the quantum physics also let us to understand more about the ultimate truth. It's because when you talk about the Big Bang or something like that, we also need to have that kind of the container to let you to understand what is the Big Bang. Okay, so what is the understanding towards the whole cosmos? So Buddhism will use some terms, okay, some terminology to understand what kind of the ultimate truth and then to describe. Okay, so the words we use to describe maybe including the openness. Okay, so very old style term, maybe the void, okay, maybe emptiness, okay. But now some US scholars, they will use the term is about open to describe what is the container or what is the whole cosmos. So quantum.
What do you mean by container? Are you talking about space?
Yes, space. Okay, so very old term when people use space or void or something like that.
So what would you make of the fact that in contemporary physics, space and time have a beginning and are finite in the past?
It's because when you talk about when the Big Bang create the whole cosmos, maybe it's also can align with the existence of the Supreme God. And then in other words of Buddhism, we also will go in that way, is that when you understand the Big Bang is the creation of the whole cosmos, can all sentient being as the creator of the Big Bang when you have the first ignorance. Okay, it's also aligned together. So, but maybe it's the limited time. I just gave a very brief introduction is because there are some scripture sutra inside Buddhism also talk about the opening of the whole universe. Is about also quite similar to Big Bang, but we use the different terminology. It's because almost Buddhism is created in 2,500 years ago, and then we talk more about ignorance. So the first ignorance maybe also can understand it that way is the opening of the Big Bang. Okay, so why you are so happy? Is it, yeah, we feel why we claim that Buddhism is a very science-friendly religion. Maybe in that point, we are goes together.
I am looking at the time here, and I'm sure that the dialogue can be ongoing, and everybody see here, and then the time just flies. But I'd like to open it to the floor now for any kind of question that we might have for the speakers. Yes.
I have a question to Professor Craig. Maybe I start with the website, www.reasonablefaith.org. So I think that this website name is very interesting because try to describe faith as reasonable.
Yes.
So in a sense, faith is not reasonable in a sense, so that it's meaningful to describe it as reasonable faith. We need to emphasize the reasonable aspect of faith. So I think that this is the main topic for today's talk, right? But I want to ask, normally when we talk about religious faith, it's because we lack evidence. If we demand adequate, sufficient evidence in order to believe God, for instance, this is not religious faith. This is science. So my central question is, I think that Professor Craig has done an admirable job in explaining the reasonableness of religion. But it seems that there should also be some sense of tension between science and faith in order to fully understand faith. For instance, I just want to give one example from the talk about the creation, God's creation of the universe. It does make sense that there's a beginning of the universe, and we talk about the creation of the universe. But I think we need to be very careful here, because when we talk about creation, it lacks time. So when God creates the universe, it doesn't require time, right? So that would be a little bit different from our understanding of creation.
Now, you've really opened a whole Pandora's box of things to talk about here. Let me try to be as succinct as I can. I never suspected that the name reasonable faith would appear controversial to people. To me, it just seemed very natural. I don't think of faith in the way that you described, as something contrary to evidence, or a way of knowing something without evidence. For me, faith is trusting in what you have good reason to think is true. It's trusting in what you have good reason to think is true. And so there's simply no contradiction between having good evidence and arguments for thinking something is true and then reposing your trust in it. So I think that these are entirely compatible. Now, with respect to the question about creation, that relates to my point about God and time in my fifth point. It seems to me that in virtue of God's relationship to time, that God must be temporally related to the universe. He doesn't exist before the universe because the Big Bang is the beginning of time and space. So there is no before. So what you have to say is that God's creation of the cosmos is simultaneous with the cosmos coming into being. They occur at the same time, t equals 0. So I would say that God without the universe is timeless, and that at the moment of creation, when he makes the universe, he enters into time in virtue of his causal connection with the universe.
Just one
I
the
think-
question.
Yes.
Well, we should move on to other
Yeah, we should-
questioners,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. I guess we probably could only afford to have 2 more questions.
I have a question for Dr. Singh.
Yeah, Dr. Singh.
2 questions for you.
2 questions.
First is that actually I agree with Dr. Craig that you have no evidence to give to support the relationship between science and Buddhism. And you go into practice and attitude. And there seems to be a vast ignorance. You talk about ignorance. There is an ignorance about the relationship between science and Buddhism. Could it be because of your ignorance and the ignorance of Buddhism in the connection between science and Buddhism, then you stay be a Buddha? Now this is the first question. Now because you don't have the knowledge about the connection. The second is that you talk about the right way, your final statement about
Correct view. Yeah.
the correct will, the right way, the correct will. Now you have not described what actually the correct will is. Well, you're very open. Well, it's commended. But how authentic is your open view in Buddhism? It is your own view, or it is the view of the Buddhism with such an open attitude? I have not finished my question yet. Now, if you are saying the correct view, if according to Dr. Craig said that the theistic will is the correct will, then would you accept it as well because it is proved as correct will? Actually, you say that if you prove to be that there is a God, it is difficult to prove. Actually, as mentioned by Dr. Craig, it is not proved. Actually, we accept knowledge because it is more explanatory power. We do not have any absolute scientific truth. We only accept those as explanation because it has more explanatory power. And according to what Dr. Craig said, a theistic will has a better explanatory power. So this must be the correct will. Then you have to accept it.
Okay, Dr. Singh. Okay, that's 3 parts questions. Sure.
Okay. I think maybe the third question will be have a self-contradicted problem to your first question. But never mind, I just try to answer one by one. Okay, so please be careful of the third question. Third question have a little bit problem there, okay? So you can think further and then we can discuss further. But first question is about, is it my only my view of Buddhism? Is it only no evidence to prove or how to see the science or Buddhism here and then any connection here or something like that? Why my talk is just like open at the Buddhist attitude towards science is because just borrow some terms used by professor is about trust. Okay, so in Buddhism, our understanding and attitude towards Buddhist teaching is that before you have the, maybe verification or before you prove about the teaching, is it true or not? And then Buddha said that, please don't start your practice. So when you can prove some sign here or some sense or some law here, and then you find that the teaching of Buddha is correct in some sense, in your understanding, then you start your practice. So that means we are not believe with some certain of uncertainty. Okay, we have no any uncertainty inside. So maybe in religious study, what is belief? When you believe something, and then you have some uncertainty here, and then but if you trust the Buddhist teaching, then you have a certain understanding, or you can trust the teachings can help you to free from suffering. Okay, so that's why I introduced first about the attitudes of Buddhism towards science, and then we believe that the science can help you to prove something inside the world, and then help you to understand more. Okay, so this is the attitudes of Buddhism towards science. So we believe that science is also something can strengthen about the conventional truth, okay, belief, but science always need to have some proof before let us know, okay? So the other second question is that, what is the right view? Is it my view is right view? No, it's because in my speech, I have already introduced to you about the law of interdependence. So the views based on the law of interdependence in the Buddhist idea, this is the right view. So what is the linkage between them is that because all sentient beings have their own view. So the problem you point out is that, yes, you point out the problem. It's because all sentient beings have their own view. So they are ignorant. So this is a kind of the self-attachment. So what is ignorance? The main problem is self-attachment. So after that, when you have some facts come out here, it's far away from your expectation and your self-attachment, then you have defilement. So that means you have greed, hatred, and ignorance going on, and then you will create some karma. So this is the problem. So the Buddha's teaching is that why I say that this is the core value of Buddhist teaching is because we believe that when Buddha say what is ignorance, and then the linkage between ignorance and the relationship between the law of interdependence is because you view, okay, your view of the whole world is your own view, okay? You don't base on the view of law of interdependence. So what is Buddha's teaching? That you have that kind of the view to see the whole world with the understanding of law of interdependence. Okay, so what is law of interdependence is that while you are here and then you need to have some conditions here, okay, maybe vehicle, maybe time, maybe the advertisement of this seminar, then all kind of the conditions that you to come here and listen our talk, okay? So this is conditions. So all kind of the conditions have the interdependence together, that you to create the karma to sit here and listen the talk. So what is the karmic consequences here? Maybe you feel happy or unhappy. Okay, so this is the karmic consequences. Okay, so if you have ignorance, is that before you join our talk, and then we expect you feel very happy or you can challenge the speaker. So this is your expectation. But after that, the fact or the result is not fit your expectation, then you can have some defilement, maybe hatred, maybe greed. So this is what is I say in Buddhism about ignorance. So that kind of the ignorance will push you to create the second kind of karma, and then you will suffer in that kind of the karma, maybe the second time of hatred. So this is why I say the science can help us to, or provide us a way to understand more about the law of interdependence. Okay, the interdependence is almost the same of the conventional truth. Okay, so I will not answer the question is because I feel the question has some self-contradictory.
Thank you. There's another question.
This question is for Professor Craig. Would it be right to say the kind of theism you have argued for this morning, the God of that kind of theism is practically indistinguishable from the God of theism, who is like an amazing clockmaker who made this clock and started clock and left it on its own devices. And therefore our present condition of humanity is actually described by the words of Adam Smith, the melancholy of a fatherless world. Thank you.
You're quite right that the arguments that I've given are consistent with a deism, which is a view of the world according to which God exists, but hasn't revealed himself in any special way. And the reason for that is that the arguments that I've been giving today are consistent with any kind of generic monotheism. Islam, Christianity, Judaism, deism, there are even certain theistic forms of Hinduism that exist, minority views. What it's not consistent with is views in which ultimate reality is impersonal, like Buddhism, Taoism, and most forms of Vedanta, Hinduism, and so forth. But although it's consistent with deism, that doesn't mean I stop there. As a Christian theist, I have other reasons not shared in today's dialogue for why I believe this creator and designer of the universe has revealed himself in a decisive and special way in Jesus of Nazareth. But the dialogue today was on religion and science, and so I wanted to focus on these scientific aspects of the relationship of Christianity to the world. But certainly I would go beyond deism in my views of the historical person Jesus of Nazareth and who he claimed to be and what he did.
So maybe in that case, we probably have to hold off, and that's leave a lot of foods for thought. And I guess you can always go on the website or maybe write emails to the speakers just to continue the dialogue. So I guess maybe we should just give a round of applause.
Yeah, I'd like to invite Professor Keith Chan to come up and present souvenirs for our guests. Thank you. Also on your seats, you will see that the next talk coming up is on Wednesday, 7:30, and it's the Easter story from Christian and Muslim perspectives. So just letting you know about that as well. Thank you. Thank you to everybody for coming and to those speakers. Thank you very much.